The first reading this morning from the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its closest neighbor in obtaining one. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people who eat of it. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted over the fire with its head, legs, and inner organs. You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. This is how you shall eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals. On all of the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague shall destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be a day of remembrance for you. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout your generations, as you shall observe it as a perpetual ordinance." The second reading this morning from the New Testament, Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 20. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the 2 of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take 1 or 2 others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it'll be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am them among them.
don't know why Jesus would be talking to his disciples about what to do if you have a conflict with someone. Because, why would that be necessary for the church? Because we know we never have any conflicts, right? I don't know a church that's ever had a conflict over coffee hour. Because regular or decaf, fair trade or Folgers, we would never argue over such a silly thing. Oh, what about the dishes? Because, my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother bought those dishes that are too heavy to lift. No, you're not going to replace those with Corelle. What are you thinking? And don't ever replace the carpet in the sanctuary. Oh, my land of Goshen. Because it might not match my daughter's wedding dresses. That's the priority, is it not? And then somebody comes to church with a Bears thing on, what do you call that thing? Like, what are you trying to do? Get us to fight right now? Right here? The problem is, at the time of Jesus, we didn't have things like internet and Facebook and Twitter and whatever else is out there. And so we don't listen enough to the words that he offers in this text. Because, if you have a grief with someone, what do? Well, you go on Facebook and tell everybody, right? And since you can't see them, you can be as vile as you want to be, and you can start a whole storm out there of people fighting over whatever that issue is. What if? What if we actually took to heart these words? If you have a problem with somebody, go to them one-on-one, in person. Look them in the eye. No, don't write a letter and send it in the mail. Don't put it on Facebook. Don't send an email. Don't call your neighbor and say, "Can you believe?" One-on-one, face-to-face, as calmly as you can. And don't just tell them how they have wronged you. Listen. Listen to where they are coming from. I don't think a lot of us have a problem telling someone what we think. I think we all have a problem listening to what somebody else thinks. One-on-one, even ground, conversation. If that doesn't work, okay, then bring somebody with you. But not the whole church. Don't get up and announce it to everybody. One more person or two more people. It can build into something different, but try to start personally. We've really lost this in our society, I believe. First of all, we all know we're right, and everybody else is wrong. And I'm telling you, at least I get an hour every Sunday to tell you what I know is right. But we don't listen anymore because we're too explosive and we're too opinionated. And I love it when I get to preach like this because I know I'm not talking about myself here. But we're convinced that our opinions are right, that what we stand for is right, and we don't leave any room for discussion. Discussion's difficult. Because if we're truly discussing with someone else, we have to be truly listening. And not the kind of listening where you're like, okay, I'm preparing my next argument for them. The kind of listening where you actually clear your brain and open up to what it is they might be saying. I get really frustrated, I'll be honest, because I'll be in a group of folks and people will be talking and they're talking over each other and I'm like, oh, it just drives me crazy because we're not listening. Somebody will make a statement And somebody over here who's talking will come back and make the same statement as if it's a new thing. It's like, well, that's just what they said, but you weren't listening. You weren't talking. Because you see, if we're really truly listening, we're leaving space for the other person. We're acknowledging the entirety of their humanity. We don't do that when we're badgering with our own opinions and our own thoughts and our own beliefs. If we're so convinced that we are so right, we don't allow the space for others, no matter what they believe. It's the hardest thing for us to do as a humankind. What Jesus was doing with those early disciples is saying, what you got to be doing, folks, is building community. And community is not where everybody gathers together and believes the same thing. Community is where we gather together and allow the differences and celebrate some of the differences. We can joke around what kind of shirt you wear to church. I mean, really. And as long as that's all in fun, that's really okay. But too often, it's not in fun because we are so serious about what we believe. And especially when we get into the world of politics, we get so entrenched, we can't listen. We won't listen. And if we can't foster that kind of community here within this congregation, how can we expect to foster that kind of community outside of this space with our neighbors and in our broader community? We have to learn to show others, to model what it means to listen and engage in serious conversation, authentic conversation. Not just spewing out what we believe, or what we've heard, or what we think we've heard, but really thoughtful, authentic conversation. Because what happens sometimes is when we get into that thoughtful, authentic conversation, we risk learning something new. I know, right? It's a stretch. We risk learning that other person's opinion or that other person, in spite of their opinion, isn't the devil incarnate. We learn to authenticate others the way we want them to authenticate us. What I love about this text is it doesn't presume that there's not going to be conflict. Because too often, that's really the problem with the church, right? People assume, well, you're Christians, you're not going to have conflict. Really? Did you read about the Crusades? I think that was kind of a big conflict thing going on. No, we're human. And what is conflict, really? Conflict is simply two different opinions. And it can be as silly as regular or decaf. Two different opinions. No, I'm not drinking regular. I'll be all jittery up here. Bad enough the way it is. I need my caffeine to get going in the morning. Okay, so what? Two different opinions. You don't have to go to war over it. And you might say, well, duh. But seriously, when you look at a lot of the conflict, especially within the church, it comes down to some very simple ideas. But we like to blow them up because it's more fun to fight over big things. We're usually fighting over some pretty small things. The church, as I've known it, is full of conflict. Because we have not just two ideas here. We have, I can't count that high. That's how many ideas we have. Everybody here has an opinion. And everybody here has the right to be heard. And everybody here has the responsibility to listen to the others. Don't talk to me about your rights unless you're willing to talk to me about your responsibilities that go along with those rights. I have a right to my opinion, but I have a responsibility to listen to yours. And when there's just 2 of us in the room, that's a little bit easier than there was 50 of us in the room. So Jesus says, start out with just the 2 of you. That's the easiest way to do it. On even ground, one-on-one, and talk it over. But always remember, if somebody's talking, somebody else needs to be listening. Katie, did you hear that? If I'm talking, you should be listening. Technology's not working today, we're good. If you have a quarrel with one another, and really it's not if, when you have a quarrel with another person, sit down over your favorite beverage and talk it out. And then come back into the community and show us what reconciliation looks like. Because that's really what we are all about. We are here to be the model of reconciliation. But in order to be that model, we have to practice it. And like with anything in life, if you don't practice it, you're not going to get good at it. And practicing it's the hard part. I probably could play like Lisa, but I don't practice. So I don't. I wish I did, but I don't like to practice. We need to practice loving relationship. We need to practice active listening. We need to practice compassion. We need to practice being in authentic community with one another. And it's hard work. I'm not going to pretend it's not a big deal. It is. It's hard work. But again, with anything else, when you practice with someone else, it makes the path easier. Let's go practice.